Welcome to Into the Abyss podcast. We're having a discussion this time. I'm here with Alex. Alex, welcome back.
Well, welcome. I've already butchered it. I've already butchered the
Oh, if I were kind, we would do a do-over, but
I'm
no.
doing well. Well, no, what I mean by butchered is like I didn't have like something specific I wanted to say at the start. It's just I said welcome to you. I have no idea why. Probably because I'm used to having other people on. But thank you for such a warm welcome. So I feel so loved and appreciated whenever I come on the Abyss. Just in case anybody's listening to this, and it will make them more likely to listen to other episodes.
Very good.
That is very true though. Like I beat a little bit tongue in cheek there, but Todd is a very, very kind person. Overly kind. Probably I barely know him, but probably to a fault if I were a betting man.
Too kind.
Is that possible? Is that even possible anymore? I
don't know. Probably not. I mean, I guess
we could all use a little more kindness now. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, the default or the average, at least if we're putting in online interaction, is just kind of just really rude and mean across the board. So
yeah, so to meet someone who's not a complete a-hole is nice. Oh, okay. So some reasonable conversation, and that's like what I know this isn't what you want to talk about, but it's always like impressed me about like the Abyss is like it is a place where you can go and just talk about anything without feeling like, I know I've said this before, but without feeling any overwhelming judgment or guilt from anybody. So that is a very nice thing. Whereas with what's going on right now, like now everyone's really, really upset about like child trafficking and whatnot. And like, how come everyone's talking about Black Lives Matter, but nobody's talking about all these kids getting trafficked? It's like, everyone knows this. This is what's weird. I see everyone respond to posts like that with, can't you care about multiple things? It's amazing that everyone already believes something, yet you're so willing to contradict yourself just because it's a very well thought out narrative that someone else has created. Because it's never like sorry, I'm rambling already. It's never like the person who has like created this meme. It's somebody is copying pasting someone else's Twitter thing where it's like, why can't we? I'm like, anyways.
Yep. Well, no judgment or rudeness here, except for fun.
In particular, for this one, because it's like I don't really care about talking about this anymore. But like, this is great way to sell that, Alex. I don't care about as much judgment as I get from conversations like this one.
Yes,
comparatively like to in the past, I'm like, this could ruin my future potentially.
Yeah. So I'll say this is sort of a crossover episode, maybe best crossover episode ever.
Oh,
because we're both podcasters, right? You are an experienced podcaster. Yes.
What's good is yours is set up as video, so everyone will get my joke face for when I said thank you right there.
Yes.
Hopefully my listeners will be able to understand that I don't seriously thank you, but I'm not that great. but thank you for the appreciation.
We want to talk about it now. That's the title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was on your podcast once, and at the very end I was like, what's the name of your podcast again?
What's the podcast this is the first episode I ever listened back to that I'm on? I understand. It's like so weird because I know that we talked about this before, but like it's amazing how, and I'm sure you'll notice this with your own podcast, you'll eventually get into what you feel like your niche is, and you'll just start doing the same thing over and over again. Mine is because people listen to it, but also because it just so happens the things that I'm the most passionate about, people also enjoy listening to. So
good. Yeah,
that works out.
That makes sense.
I'm not that passionate about just like I'm not that passionate about Game of Thrones. I'm not that passionate about Harry Potter or Star Wars or anything like that. I enjoy talking about them, but I'm not like, I will die for these subjects.
Right.
Never.
Yeah. What about Star Wars?
Would I die for Star Wars?
No. Well, I had the conversation. I had the conversation with Jeff, and you were like, "Oh, that would have been fun to hop on."
It's fun. I love talking about it. I just know. Well, no, I know that I love talking about it. I also know that most people don't. Most people don't. Just because I've done it, I don't know what the listens to are on that one or the downloads were on that one. But I know when I have done Star Wars ones, Game of Thrones ones, some of my Harry Potter ones do pretty well because I'm just like, everyone loves Harry Potter except for me, and I'm just the old curmudgeon on it. They don't get listens. So I was just like, yeah, I'll talk about my mental health and the psychopathy that I think that I have that I might not actually have.
Nice. So wait, did you say what's your position on Harry Potter?
That she knew her audience really well, so I can give her credit for that. But it's not that once you get older and start rereading stuff, you start to realize it's the same with like Star Wars and other things like that. Like you start recognizing like that's a really stupid. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but wizardry has been around for thousands upon thousands of years before the birth of Christ. Yet Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry celebrates Christmas. That has always bothered me. It's like, why are they celebrating Christmas? I don't understand. Makes no sense. And Easter. There is one book where they mention that they have like Easter break. I would feel like it would be like the opposite of conservatives now. They would refer to it as like spring break. They would not refer to it as Easter break, but they call it Easter break. the little things that upset me.
Yes, that's a very interesting hill to die on there.
And to be fair, I do it for the ratings. I don't necessarily actually care that passionately about the discussions that I've had in the past. I just don't.
That's funny. So I was gonna say I've actually been, to whenever I have these discussions, I like to kind of get in the zone, prepare, and do some studying about it. But for this, I've been studying you. I've been,
okay.
Yeah. I've been listening. Not
to your
creepy
podcast,
at all,
but
yeah.
I'm
No,
pumped.
no.
Have you been mainly listening to like ones that could have a religious twist on them? I
Actually,
guess.
no, not really. I mean, I just listened to some of the most recent ones.
Oh, okay, I would prefer those ones. So that's a lot of like trying to self-actualize.
Yeah.
trying to discover that meaning in life, because that's a really big a difficult thing when you feel like everything that you've ever known is lost and gone, like your entire worldview is destroyed, is trying to find what the meaning in life is after that. Because it's so easy before, it's like just be a good person, when in reality most people aren't that great of people. Be a good person, and then you're rewarded richly at the end. Like that's a very simple that, and I'm sure that like comes across very condescending. Like that's a very simple worldview, but I feel like it is, right? It's like you do good, you have these rules, you follow these rules, and you get a reward at the end. And that was gone. So it's just like, so if it really is, we have this finite amount of time. Let's say most people are living to lucky 80 years old. So I only have 50 years left. What do I want to accomplish in those 50 years? Fully knowing that it will be forgotten within another 50 to 100 years, and how sad that is. I think a lot of people will listen to it and be like, well, that's why I don't leave, because that's a really depressing worldview. Like, unfortunately, I haven't got out of the wilderness yet on this. And I feel like when I do get out of the wilderness in this spiritual journey that I've gone on, it will be so much more rewarding than I ever could have imagined. If that means that it takes me my entire life to get to, that's fine. I just, that has been the hardest thing, is just trying to figure out essentially your own morality, because it's no longer being prescribed to you. You get to create it yourself and figure out what it is, which for some people that's good, for some people that isn't. Like I'm sure you've heard in like fast and testimony meetings, the people, which they're wrong. First off, like if I didn't have the church, I'd be an addict and I would be having sex and killing all the time. Like, no, you wouldn't. Trust me, there's plenty of people who go to church who murder and commit all of those crimes too. So trust me, people who want to commit crime find ways to commit crime. So you probably wouldn't be a junkie on the street. You might have some sort of addiction issue, but trust me, most people are good people. You're not going to, it's not going to be a Jekyll and Hyde type scenario, you leaving or staying in the church, whatever it is. The church being the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I've finally had quite a renaissance with them, of just like, you want to know what, let's just try to, especially as I find that most of my judgment towards them comes from how seriously I took it back in the day. So as an example, we would not go swimming on Sundays, but there would be families who would go, well, if you go swimming as a family on a Sunday, that's not breaking the Sabbath. I'm starting to be less judgmental now of those type of people, the people who
Yeah.
got to have the best experience with the church, like not to experience any of the crap that the church has, like none of that extra baggage. I'm just jealous of you people and upset that you got to live such an awesome way when I had to live it in the most fundamentalist version of the current LDS faith or Latter Day Saint faith. I'm not sure what the vernacular is,
You weren't
but
polygamist or anything, right?
as far as I know, I know I come from polygamous stock, but I don't think in the last 100 years there's been any. Oh, it's so tough, man. Like
Yeah.
I like just being like this is like a perfect. I just woke up a little while ago and I'm feeling a little vulnerable from the good the good time I had last night.
Yep.
And it's just I don't want to be like so antagonistic towards the church anymore. And I know that that's like what people who are still in the church that really believe see when people leave. It's like, oh, there's a classic trope of you leave the church but you can't leave it alone. And it's just like, well, if you dedicated, I've seen some of you have girlfriends for a year and you can't seem to get over that girlfriend for a while. So how about you, my God, my father who just died, how about you give me a little time to mourn that? I think I deserve a little bit of time to be upset and angry about that. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you don't have to give it to me. You have your choice to do that or not. But
Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, I guess I can see how there would be um, probably what's most visible are the people who are still very close to it. And so there's a lot of emotion there where we don't see as much the people who have distanced themselves more thoroughly. So that's not part of our the way we tend to think of people who've left the churches or the typical um,
oh,
examples.
you mean you see the angry people, not the
Yeah,
people
yeah,
who like healthily get through the process really quickly, through the
right.
grieving process fast.
Yeah, so there's maybe a bit of a distortion in the way that it's perceived, right?
Yeah.
Uh, just because of what we're exposed to more.
I had like this weird epiphany yesterday. I don't know how in depth I'll go into what we were doing, but we were having if my mom listens, we were being silly. That's how I described the state of mind I was in yesterday. We were being silly, and I like had this epiphany with one of the people that I was hanging out with. I'm like, you want to know what? If most Mormons end up, because he's what you would call a Jack Mormon, I guess. It's the person who believes in it but breaks every single rule. Which I don't know why we've always celebrated Jack Mormons, yet we hate a bunch of ex-Mormons who don't drink, don't smoke, and don't do all of that stuff, but because they don't believe in God, like they're somehow less of a person than this Jack Mormon. Anyways, obviously just trying to unpackage a lot of the baggage I still have. But like I was like, well, if you're like a true believing Mormon, like you act this way, like maybe there is hope for people like me and you being able to find other people like you who I can be friend with, and then maybe like being able to find the people who don't break all the rules but are like devout, being able to have like better relationships with them. What sucks, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is like, but you weaponize our faith against us. And like, unfortunately, the person who knows someone's faith the best is the person who left it, more often than not. And so
Probably,
I
yeah.
I do that all the time. I'm just like, no, you can't do that. I know you can't do that because this rule. Unfortunately, I did all the research on your religion so that you didn't have to. Um,
Yeah, I
they
was
hate.
I have I've had some exposure to the CES letter, with the really famous document that's like crashes it brings people's faith crashing down in many cases, though not in your case, right? Because you
No,
predated
no.
that. But
Okay.
I was just I pulled it up to screen through it again, and but it's interesting how I guess dedicated he is to the religion. Like he's researched it so much, more than most people would care to do, right? But yeah, so it's an interesting point you make there. Like the people um, who are leaving a faith um, probably know it really well, because it is a bit of a kind of a justification process, probably. Um, but there's a lot of research and stuff that goes on where people looking at it are like, whoa, how do you know all that stuff?
And you have the different types of people, right? You have the people who leave it because they just didn't enjoy it. Like there are people who leave it for historical reasons and what would be considered in my opinion, hypocritical reasons. Like, oh, you guys don't even follow your own rule on this. Why would I left more for a lot of those reasons. Really, the main reason I left was because as I'm starting to bash with a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses, I want to make sure I know their religion perfectly as well. And then you like research, like, huh, this Rutherford fella got a couple of these predictions for the end of the world incorrect. And then once you come across, you're like, oh, Joseph Smith got some end of the world predictions wrong too. You're like, dang it, mother effer. And so
Did
you like
you
have to go back and like think about that.
was that as a missionary that you were doing that? Looking
Yeah.
into
So I would look up stuff. Mainly it would be like looking for Bible verses to distort. And so like, well, that's why you left, because you were bringing the spirit of contention into. I'm like, well, you want to know what? Apparently some people really like facts when they are going to have their minds changed. And then there are people who facts couldn't matter any less than they do. But my on my mission, that's where it started. And then when I got back from my mission, I started having a lot of um, reading some of that and then listening to podcasts too. So I read I don't even know what the name of the book is. I just know it was by Grant Palmer. It's about the Book of Mormon, and
Yeah.
it goes pretty in depth with once again, it's been so long and I feel like I'm starting to get over it. You forget things.
Yeah, and an insider's view of
And yeah,
Mormon history.
and it's the dude. It's heavy focus on the guy who was like the historian back in like the 1890s or whatever. I forget his name.
B.H.
Um,
Roberts.
Yep, that's it. And like all of the different things that he noticed about the Book of Mormon in particular. And I'm like, oh, the things I didn't like.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, well, it sucks when I just thought like, oh, this wasn't great. And then he comes and be like, yeah, this definitely doesn't make sense. But hey, you just got to have faith. I'm like, do you? Do you just got to? Yeah, I love George Michael as much as the next guy, but I don't think you just got to have faith. I hope someone gets that reference.
I actually don't. So
so
I'm
George
just gonna have
Michael
faith in it.
wrote the song "Faith." You gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. You gotta have faith. If you've heard that song, baby,
Yeah,
I know you're asking me to stay.
it's
But
coming
anyways,
now.
yeah. But anyways, that was a big post mission thing. But then I was like looking at the economics of it. I'm like, BYU costs significantly less than
Hmm.
any other school I could go to. I got into it. My wife is cool with how I believe and how she now believes, or how she probably had believed for a long time beforehand. And we're going to make this work. And then I think another reason too is like I still live in Utah. And so when you're in the thick of it, it's much more, because I remember when I lived in LA for 6 months, like Mormonism was not a thing I talked about very often, or if like felt very angry about. But then when I came back to Utah, that fire stoked again. We're just like, oh my gosh, all you like, I don't think people realize how damaging the things they say about their faith are. And I know a lot of people are probably like, well, I'm just trying to be positive, say positive things. But just so you know, for every single blessing that you think you have had, someone has had that exact same situation just go 180 degrees a different way. So stop calling it a blessing, because it makes it seem like God, for some reason, loves you more than other people. So just if I could preach for a second, I'm just thinking like the people who like celebrate their victories over cancer or whatever. I'm like, and then the hundreds of people I know who have died from cancer who believe the same way that you do, younger and more sad stories than the 60-year-old who has cancer that survives it. Like, so, but then at the same time, I also go, but you want to know what? I'm happy for you too. Like, I'm happy that you did, but just stop ascribing it to God. Like, I'm happy for you, but I'm happy because you did it. You did it. You accomplished, you conquered this thing. God wasn't the person who zapped the cancer out of your body. Like the greatest thing about leaving the church, that, and the most empowering thing I've had, which a lot of people would probably be like, Alex, you seem like you don't actually have this empowerment, is the realization that I did everything on my own, or with the support of other people. It wasn't God, it wasn't Jesus who gets the credit for it. It's this great cast of characters that I have around me, which I know that the retort to that is, God put that cast of characters around you to help you. I'm like, okay, whatever. Sounds good. But all I know is it was those people, not him. If he put them there, great. They still did all of the heavy lifting. He didn't magically wave his hand to help me get through whatever situation I was going to. So I do have a much more profound respect and appreciation for the people who got me. So I'm thinking, like, when I got kicked out of BYU Idaho, thinking that my life was at its lowest point, even in reality, looking back on it, it's like, it's something I don't even think about that much anymore, and how insignificant that really was. I mean, it did shape the rest of my life in a sense, because who knows what would have happened if I stayed. But I'm very thankful for all those people that have been around me and have helped me through things.
Well, and how do you view just chance of things that have, because not everything is um, something that you do or that people around you do, but just things that happen. And how do
It's
you think of that?
chaos.
It's chaos.
It's all chaos. And then, like, sometimes you get lucky and then other times you don't. There's got to be like, I just have a hard time seeing billionaires who I know are terrible people, who didn't really invent anything of their own. They just kind of built off of an empire that was created for them. And I go, just got lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think they worked hard, and I don't think that necessarily having and so if your question is more of like, what would have happened if I didn't get kicked out of school or whatever, and like the chance and randomness of things there, it's just hard to, it's like, I don't know. I'm happy with where I am in life, but I know my life would be 100% different had I not been kicked. Like, there are little events that alter time and space.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
do believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's like, I don't believe in the V for Vendetta quote where it's just like, I, like God, do not play with dice. Like, I don't agree with that. I think everything is just chance, and sometimes it all works out nicely.
Hmm.
Because you just think how crazy it is, though. Like, Todd, for you and I to be talking right now, the number of different little things that had to have happened, like
Yeah.
my great great grandparents, some of them getting out of murder acquittals, like not going to prison, like just like those little random things that led to my parents having 9 kids instead of 8. Just
Are
and
you the
that
ninth?
just lucky. Yeah, I'm the 9th.
Okay.
So you just get. I'm very
You're the
grateful. I'm very grateful for everything that happened. I'm happy that my parents were Mormon and wanted to have a bunch of kids, or else I
yeah.
wouldn't be here.
You're
So
you're the Saturday's Warriors child.
yes,
What's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Who
last
are
one?
his children coming? Emily? I'm Emily.
Emily. You're Emily. Yeah. Yeah.
Coming down.
Was there a Jimmy who was trying to stop you from being born?
I don't think, I doubt it. I don't think any of my family cared what my parents were doing. Like, whatever, man, whatever. And if it was a Jimmy, it would have been like a 5-year-old or 6-year-old who just didn't want another brother to compete, to compete
Right.
for attention. But even then, I don't think so. I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess part of what I think of is like what I want out of this type of thing that we're doing right now, and then just in general, is for people to be able to have peaceful conversations over differences, right? So I think probably what's a difficulty is that a lot of people just feel like they can't talk to either anyone or the people who are closest to them, right? So like um, us just sitting down. So I'll get into this a little bit, but I consider myself a very religious person, and but I think it's important for people who are on all sides of this to be able to understand each other, and not just to like get along and just agree to disagree, but also really appreciate um, each other's differences and perspectives. And I think that's part of what can be most the saddest thing when somebody leaves their family's religion, leaves the Mormon church, that there's this barrier all of a sudden, right? That uh, even if there's a kind of a peaceful coexistence at family reunions or on the weekends, there's always kind of a barrier. Like, okay, you're not quite all the way in, and I think that's just very unfortunate. Um, and I'd like to do what I can to help people work through that and heal that.
That varies from family to family. It really does seem to be, well, I should even take it a step further. It's individual to individual how well they're going to react and associate with that person afterwards. Because I think like if I were going to be giving advice to my Mormon self, which means I'm giving advice to Mormons, in case you Mormons aren't picking up on it.
Tricky.
If I were if Mormon Alex, the advice that I would give to myself is you have to throw away for a brief moment, you have to throw away everything that you believe, because what happens is you start to see people doing things that you don't necessarily agree with, little things. So like, let's say drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, which does have its dangerous, like even more dangerous than coffee, swearing, different other normal things that happen in the real world. And like most human interactions, like you just have to throw away is not does not equate evil. Not saying that a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people who don't do that, but just most of the people I know have it that kind of way. Like there are rules that you have to follow. And most of them treat me with respect for the most part, but you find out very quickly that those people that you had nothing in common with besides the church. I think that's like one of the most disappointing things about this is you go, oh, all we would ever talk about was this calling, that calling, this person, what they're doing in church, this person, what they're doing in church, what they're doing with their lives. And that's really, really sad. And then you end up just talking about, you just grasp at straws for things to have in common with one another. And so it's like, oh, let's talk about The Office, because that's all that we really have anymore. And generally speaking, you try to avoid religious talk in general, because as a Mormon person, I totally get it. Someone's coming in and attacking something that you believe and have such a profound respect, admiration, and appreciation for. And they are just kind of poo-pooing all over it. So my advice to the people who are leaving the church is, the only time that you get to bring it up, which I know seems unfair, is if they bring it up. And then Mormon people, if you open the floodgates, it's your own fault if you drown. That's all I have to say about that. You cannot, like, if the anger gets to like a palpable level, it's because you brought up the subject and it's something that they're really, really passionate about. Not all of us are like that. I am one of those, like, I forget where it was. And it sucks too, because it was at work. But they brought up how, like, women are praying in general conference or something. Is that never a thing before?
Yeah, there was it hadn't happened for ever, and then the first woman to pray in conference was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or something like that.
It was something else though. It
Yeah,
was like
and it was
within the
kind of
last
funny.
year though. Something with women in the priesthood. I don't remember what it was.
Witnesses maybe.
Oh, that is exactly what it is. So my thing there, everybody, another thing, it's the cancer thing. When you come in with a story like that and go, oh, don't call it revelation, first off. Be sure to call it a policy and not a doctrine, which you're all really, really great at already. Don't worry. You guys know, call everything a policy, just in case it's not actual doctrine. Genius at that. Just so you know, everything to me was a doctrine. I followed every GD thing that Bruce R. McConkie said to F and do. Except, once again, except having sex. Where was I going with this? Oh, because people are like celebrating this thing. I'm like, you know what? You guys go and apologize to the people over the last 100 years who have wanted this and were berated and othered because they wanted this so bad. You owe all of them an apology, because turns out they were right. We could have women witness all of these different things this entire time. They were right the entire time. More right than whoever was the prophet, whoever was the apostles at the time. They were more correct about that, if we're celebrating it now. And like, I get upset about stuff like that and passionate about it. And like, after I get passionate and upset about it, I like simmer down. I go, why did, like, the way that and this has been like a recurring theme with me recently. My message wasn't incorrect. The way that I delivered that message was incorrect. But I just want to say, like, you think like all of these things are really awesome and amazing, guys, and people have wanted these things for forever. They've wanted these little stupid things, like how little and insignificant they are. And like now it's glorious and amazing, when there have been people who've been saying it, shouting it from the rooftops for hundreds of years. It just makes me so sad, these people who are vindicated but are dead. It's kind of like Van Gogh. You know how like he wasn't a famous artist until after he was dead? I feel bad for that dude. Tortured soul his
Yeah.
entire life, super depressed, never didn't have like a really great life. And then boom, right after he dies, all of his art is like super awesome and he gets the recreation that might have made him have a better life. Like it's sad. I don't
Yeah.
know.
The Van Gogh effect. We
I
should
feel
call it that.
I feel like I'm holier than thou right now, but like I was never that person. I feel bad for these other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Sorry, you're
I
gonna
think
ask
that's,
something, then I went on my 5-minute rant.
no, I actually, it was, my daughter was banging on the door. So it's
Uh,
gonna be like, oh, maybe we should pause for a second, but it looks like she's gone now. So,
she could sense the evilness. Good for her.
I think so. Yeah. She was trying to warn
Good for
me.
her.
So, yeah. So
Maybe.
I think that's that kind of, having your consciousness raised to think about, okay, how these things that we just kind of go through the motions and say all the time, maybe reflect on them a little bit and try and think, how might other people perceive that comment? Uh, and that's a skill that everyone really has to get better at with a global connected digital world. And I think we're finding that out a lot, in political issues, and with the social unrest and racial issues and things like that, that things that we've just gone around saying all the time, we didn't realize, oh, that can be perceived in a way that we didn't account for. And I think that applies to these type of relationships in and out of Mormonism. That, things that we just kind of go through the motions and say all the time, we've never considered how that might be received from a different perspective. And probably because I like your point of just like at least provisionally throwing everything out for a moment, and that can be very scary. And that's why I say provisionally, right? Just like
Yeah.
take the glasses off for a moment, set them down with the assurance that you can put them back on. But just think, if I were looking at the world from this other perspective, what would that be like? And think through that, because I think that's an important part of having ownership of your own faith, and a reflective religion. And then you can put them back on afterwards, and things will probably look different afterwards. But I think probably more developed. I would hope that, from a religious perspective, that would enhance, the religious worldview, and make it richer. But yeah, we gotta in relationships, there's a lot of responsibility and burden there, and it's difficult. But
Because you have to do it differently for each person. Like I
oh
bet
yeah,
you, how many kids you have? 3?
yeah,
I bet you don't communicate the same with every one of those kids. If I were a
definitely.
betting man.
That is definitely true,
And so like
especially
that's
since
what's
one is
so
an
hard with
infant.
human communication. Touche. And that's what's so hard with just human interaction in general. Like you get so used to like this good friend who you have like amazing communication rapport with, and then like you try to do that exact same communication method with another person who you think is similar to that person, and it blows up in your face.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
tough. It's like it's really hard. And then like for and this is what makes me the most sad too, is like the LDS church is at its best ever, like from
Mm,
a political standpoint, from its way that it views different things. Like the world, most religion is getting better as the years go on. So every single religion's at its peak powers when it comes to how awesome it is compared to its recent past, and even its old past and whatnot. Um, I would venture to say that even with the child abuse that the Catholic Church is going through right now, it's probably still much better than it was 1,000 years ago, where they could kill whoever they wanted while still also molesting children if they wanted to. Like it, like, and I know it's like kind of how we started off. Like, well, we should still care about it. I know. I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about it, but hey, I go back to quit. If you care about it so much, quit your job, make that your full-time job. You go help that thing. But I need to provide for my family. I know, because you care about your family. You don't care about the kids that are getting molested by the Catholic priests. And that's fine. I'm not mad about that. Just shut up. just shut up about like it's the classic, like the bark is stronger than the bite. Like nobody actually does. That's my biggest frustration right now with like anything, is nobody actually does anything. Everyone
Mm.
just bitches and complains about every single thing. They don't actually try to make a difference with anything going on. I went and marched. No offense, cool, cool. And then guess what? A couple weeks later, another person got killed. Much good that did. Sorry. I took this to a
Yeah.
dark place. I,
Wow.
I
Yeah, that one really
apologize for
dark.
that.
Yeah. No. But yeah, there's it's difficult because we want to do good things, but there's kind of this maybe despair of lack of power we have. Like we want to do something, but we don't know what to do or feel like we can do anything about
And
it.
then when you ask, people get mad at you. You shouldn't have to ask that. I'm like, all right, well, guess what I'm going to continue to do? I'm going to continue to quarantine, going to continue to play music on my piano, try to write songs. That's what I'm going to continue to try to do.
Yeah. Well,
Because like there's very few things that I find joy in life from. So I'm going to
yeah.
try to, and that's what sucks too. I always feel like I come across as like super negative whenever I start to get into like conversations like this. And I think it's because I have such a positive outlook on the world. Where it's like, still living in the best time ever. Like this is the bet. Like I was talking to I was having a problem with the Zoom connection. And I was starting to get mad. I was like, mother F, like, the classic upset at technology when Google Maps doesn't work. And then I go, I am so happy that the thing that I get mad at today is that my Zoom link isn't letting everybody get in. Our technologic advances have gone so far that is all that I get angry about today. I don't have to, like, I get to worry about that. I don't have to worry about, so what am I going to feed myself today?
Makes
Anyways,
you
sorry.
wonder, like, yeah, in the future, when technology is an order of magnitude more advanced too, like what we'll get upset about. We can't even imagine now what we'll be upset about in, in the
And I
future.
think that's part of the reason that I love that I'm upset about. I get upset about the LDS Church is because it is like, for all of the good that the church is doing and for all of the positivity, it is still pretty antiquated, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Like it does seem, this isn't, I haven't come up with this. Like someone's like, I always seems like the church is like 20 years behind. And I would say kind of accurate. Like, I feel like as far as what we view as appropriate morality, they're at 2000s now. 2000s,
Mm.
people starting to get a lot of tattoos, people starting to get a lot of piercings, wearing a lot of bikinis. Now people in the Mormon church are doing that too. And that's great. Granted, they did have a rules established to negate the 2000 um, feelings towards morality, but like now we're in 2020 and like they don't even talk about that stuff anymore. They don't care. Um, and so, sorry. And so my point there is just the order of magnitude of where we're going to be. I think that's why I focus on the church. So just like, it's such an easy target. It's such an easy thing where if I want to put my anger or whatever anxiety I'm feeling in life, I can put it towards that. And I feel better faster. Granted, albeit it's kind of like heroin, it goes away. And that's why I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what the point of this life is now with the knowledge that I believe.
Hmm.
And that's tough.
Yeah, well, and I think of that as kind of a either a religious exercise, or it's kind of like the new version, right? Because we're always, I think, we're always going to be concerned about what is it we're doing here in this life? What are we trying to accomplish, or what's the purpose of it all? Those questions probably don't
The
go
age old
away.
questions.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, those are questions that religion does deal with. So, in a way, whether we call it religion or not, it carries on in
Do you
some
believe in
form.
eternal progression?
Eternal progression, like,
Like, so
in the
I'll like, so
afterlife.
like, yeah, so like terrestrial people can go to or telestial can go to terrestrial to celestial, or
Yeah. So,
however the order is.
yeah, my hunch is that there's probably some form of universal salvation that is true. So, like, everyone can, um, yeah, can attain the highest form of reward and peace. So, yeah,
But they
like,
can get that afterlife.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
for example, you're not
yeah,
set in the terrestrial kingdom your entire
for
life.
all of eternity. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
eternity. Yeah, that's a better said. Life is 80 years. Eternity is forever.
Yeah, yeah. I do. Yeah, that's my theory. Yeah, that
Do you feel like that's super nuanced? Or do you
um
think that's a pretty common belief for the LDS faith?
that is a good question.
Because I believe
I'm
that
not
way
all that.
is why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
I'm not necessarily a good at gauging that, because sometimes I'm surprised. Like, I'll think something is a common view, and I'll bring it up, like in Sunday school or something. And then people will be like, "Whoa," and like, really? I thought everyone thought that.
Doesn't that
But
illustrate a problem?
maybe. um,
Because I felt the same way too, like in church. Like I feel like there needs to be I don't know what it would be though, like a declaration, or it's just like this is how we believe everything.
yeah,
Because that's a
um,
big deal. Like, don't get me wrong. There are small things that I just
yeah,
brought up, like ear piercings, that I don't really care about. But like,
yeah,
there's a difference between finite infinity, which I know sounds stupid, or fixed infinity, as compared to an eternal progression of maybe you're at the worst kingdom when you start off and moving forward. Like that's a
right.
significant
Yeah, it
difference.
makes a big difference, right? And especially like in our family relationships, because we tend to think like, okay, I'm going to the celestial kingdom, right? But Joe over here, who's kind of gone down a different path, not so sure about him, how we interact with him, it makes a difference, that doctrinal view. So like, if we think that it's this life and then after death, there's no reform, it's the fate is sealed, then we're going to be a lot more concerned and try and influence. Whereas if we think, okay, that reform and progression can still persist afterward, um, probably take things a little easier, be a little more patient. Um, I would think just focus on having a positive relationship, um, and not be so uptight about it. Probably.
So what do you think that makes it because granted we don't really know each other, like let's be honest, like we had
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
podcast where we talked for 3 hours.
Right.
What makes it so easy for someone like you and then someone like me to have a conversation? But I don't know your family, nor do I know people in your ward or anything like that. But I bet you there are people who would not get along with me as well as they might get along with someone like you, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like for some reason, you and I have no problem communicating. You and that other person have no problem communicating. The transitive property doesn't work
That's what I
out.
was going to say. Yeah, it's not transitive.
and then I talk to that person. They're just like, no, he's an a-hole. I don't like that guy at all. Like I don't know what. Like I don't know if it's because you can take the way that I communicate, or if it's I communicate differently with you. Like I honestly don't get it. Like because from day one, I felt there were people in the abyss. If I'm bringing up the abyss, where it was just like super easy communicating with them, and like I never felt like my opinion was misconstrued in any way. But then there are other people I'm like, they didn't get it. They didn't get what I meant, and now they don't like me.
Yeah. Well, and if I could say like what
Just
there
common. It's just human interaction.
two options that we could look at here of what the answer is. Like, one is that there are some styles of interaction that just get along with everyone. That could be one interpretation. I don't think that's it. The other would be that there are kind of overlaps, right? There are bridges. So you have groups A, B, C, and D. Somebody can overlap with A and B. Somebody can overlap with C and D. That's probably what it is. So like I don't necessarily for somebody who's just like really bitter and like nothing good about Mormonism or about religion at all, I'm probably not going to have much of a conversation there, because there just wouldn't be too much in common. I try not to
And there
be
are
a jerk.
people like that too.
Yeah, right. So my bridge wouldn't overlap with that, but my bridge definitely overlaps with religious people, right? Because I share a lot of the same views, and so yeah, that's probably what it is. I think you're right that it's not necessarily transitive. So maybe we have to have like a bit of a game of telephone to get
Well,
to get ideas across between the
and
different groups.
I try to do like the sandwich, the criticism sandwich, where like you start off positive, negative, positive, and I just feel like that's so condescending. So like, especially
Mm,
like most adults, just like, oh, I'm going to force these, because there are nice things to say about the church. Like the way that they view family, for the most part, is very, very effective and efficient to growing and having useful children, and them being good citizens. Now, once you throw in the wrench of anything LGBTQ, et cetera, that's when it becomes a little bit complicated. But for the most part, the family aspect of it is great. The community of it is pretty fantastic for the most part, especially the people who really give a damn. Otherwise, you just have people, because that is the nice thing that is frequently talked about. You move into an area, you have instant friends, but you also lose those friends immediately if you ever move, for the most part, unless you've lived in that area for a long time and were able to form 10-year, 20-year bonds with these people. But typically speaking, it just seems like, and this is normal, it's because it's life. I go back to, all people give a damn about are their close friends and their family. So it's themselves, their family, and taking care of them, and sometimes putting their family above them, which is nuts to me, because if you're dead, you can no longer take care of your family. So you care less about these other three people if you're trying to save that one person with your own life. Uh, so obviously, it's a little different story, but you have these built-in friends, and these, that's the one thing I don't miss is like, and then what's been really hard for me is like, oh, people didn't actually like me. Um, they were told that they were supposed to be nice to people, and then when I leave, that relationship really isn't like a relationship anymore. It was just like, yeah, you're just supposed to like interact and be nice to people. I'm like, oh my god, this entire time I thought like we were really, really good friends, and then now because of, generally it's geography. Now because of geography, we no longer have that same interaction. But I also get it because like people have lives, they have kids, they have like things that are going on. But yeah, it's been really, and that could just be actually not an LDS thing at all, just like my personality and how it meshes with people, that they don't want to put in that time and effort anymore, which either realization sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
Either I'm a huge problem, or these people have never actually loved me, and both don't feel good. And it'd be nice for there to be like a positive, happy one, like, oh, like life just gets busy, but I just doubt that. Your life was just as busy 3 years ago when I was living next to you.
Yeah.
Not much has changed.
Yeah, I liked what you said about the sandwich thing of I think I agree, it can come off disingenuous. I think it can come off fine if it's sincere, like if it's not even as a ploy to kind of, oh, I'm going to try and set this person
I
up
want
to
to
not
find
be
common
defensive.
ground.
But yeah, right. Because I think
Lure them into a false sense of security.
right, yeah. Because I usually I probably do something like that often in conversations, but it's not necessarily calculated. It's just natural, and I think that's probably fine. But yeah, I agree. You don't. A lot of times, if it's just kind of like, okay, this is what we're talking about right now. This is what matters. We don't have to hedge everything. We just need to, if somebody has a concern, like this bothers me, just listen and like, yeah, okay, I can see why that would bother you, and maybe not even bring up an apologetic for it in that moment, if you even if you have one, because like a lot of times, if there's an issue people have, I could think of ways to mitigate it, or to answer it in ways that, or that's not quite the full story, blah blah blah, uh, and that might work from a logical point of view, if we're really trying to do something academic to answer a question or an issue. But that's usually not the case, right? We're dealing with a personal issue, so it's not the moment for that. Maybe that comes later. At the moment, it's just kind of like, okay, I want to, I'll listen to uh, the concern and receive it, be receptive, be a listening ear, and say, yeah, I hear that. That's probably more important, because people need to get things out.
Do you ever struggle with what is and what isn't important? Because like, once again, I believe that it's the family, friends, and then using your money how you want to take care of people you don't know.
So
Because I don't feel like, oh, sorry,
yeah,
but I want to
yeah, go ahead.
add to that question a little bit more, like, because I think that's the thing I'm struggling with a lot, especially like in conversations like this about like the LDS faith. If I really don't believe that it ends up mattering in the end, like, why do I talk about it as much as I do? Because really what I should be talking about a lot is the US tax code. I should be trying to figure that out, because if we can figure out the US tax code, there could be more wealth and prosperity for these friends of mine, for myself, and for my family. But I never talk about that. I talk about all these things that I literally can't change. Is that something that you ever, are there things that you feel like, why am I so passionate about this one thing that isn't going
Definitely.
to change the world?
Yeah. So a few things on that. So one is like I guess I'll start with the tax code one. So that's kind of a technical issue of how to accomplish something. But then in the first place, it's important to get people to care about the things that the tax code address, right? So if we're wanting to make a more just society, say like we want to reform the tax code to create services for people to take care of people for their needs and things like that. Then that's an issue too, like right. So to care about another person is a uh, it's a trait that needs to be developed, and there's a lot of selfishness in the world, right? That's something I've been noticing uh, recently, that people are very concerned only about uh, their own selves, or about their families, but don't really care about people who don't look or think like them, even within the same country. Um, and that gets on bigger issues that I think start to get into a religious sphere. So one of the ways I think about religious topics is religion is kind of like what's most ultimate. What is the biggest thing? Like we could think of that metaphysically or just ethically and socially, right? So metaphysically, it could be like, okay, how does the universe come into being, and how do we exist, and all that. And then ethically, it's like, okay, what is it that we're doing here? What are we trying to do with our lives? So what are we trying to do with each other? Uh, and so those big ultimate questions, I think of as religious in nature. And whether you have the whole structure around that, whether it's like the biblical stories, or the Mormon plan of salvation, right? Those are the nuts and bolts of it. But the big questions I think of as religious in nature. So why do I care about those? I think it actually does relate to uh, the very technical questions of running a society, like how to have the tax code. Uh, and actually, an interesting example of that, I would say, is Hugh Nibley. So Hugh Nibley is well-known Mormon apologist who also was very concerned about social issues and how to have a just society, and how to apply um, the ideas of care and love for your neighbor um, in actual practice. Um, so I think it all relates. So it's not just like um,
It's like a
just
tree. It's like you have the trunk of the tree, and then you have all of the different branches that are
mhm.
coming off it, and then to the leaves, and to what if maybe there's some fruit, so you have some blossoms on there
Yep.
too, and all the
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. And so there are in math and physics, there's this idea that you can do uh, a different frame of reference to look at the same object, right? So um, I think in some cases there's a religious reference frame to look at things, and then there's a non-religious frame to look at things, and they could be oriented differently, right? It could look upside down, um, and it might seem like it's a different thing, but I think one of the reasons it's good to look at things from different frames, right? Putting everything that you believe away for a second and looking at it in a different way, is to see those similarities. So like how I've been describing it is the tree. The religious questions are the trunk, right? The trunk and the roots
Roots,
that
yeah.
give rise to everything else. Whereas from another perspective, from a non-religious secular perspective, it might look complete opposite, right? Like the religious stuff are just the branches that maybe we could even trim away, where the trunk are the more technocratic issues of how to run an economy. So that Karl Marx talked about it as like the religion's the superstructure, but what really matters is the economic stuff. Yeah, I think there's a point to that. But I don't necessarily think they're contradictory, but there has to be we have to talk through it, right? And I think that's an interesting part of the political process. There's a breakdown where it's like we see these unbridgeable divides that I don't necessarily think are unbridgeable on a lot of things, because I do think Christianity, for example, and Mormonism um, has a lot that could be applied um, politically in different ways. And so we see a lot of the very the Christian right, the LDS right, where I think in the scriptures, a lot of it could be applied on the other side as well, even this for cultural reasons, or maybe just for reasons of habit. It's not.
Actually, you know what makes me upset as we're talking about this? I'm getting a little steamed because
Uh-oh.
as you were saying that, like I was saying, it's like, why is it that like the LDS people that I follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter in the South, or in very white gentrified areas, or anyways, essentially, there isn't one. We, the LDS Church proclaims to have like all of the truth, but there's not one single place that I've ever been that has been exactly the same as the other. Yeah, we all have basketball courts. Yeah, we all have like those little niceties in all of our buildings and whatnot, and like they look relatively the same. But for some reason, everyone's getting the exact same doctrine and taking it a much different way. What would be great is if, I'm being sarcastic right now, everyone, what would be great is if there was a person on earth who could just tell us exactly what to do. We still don't have to do it. Like literally, the prophet can speak and tell us exactly what to do, and you can still go against it. Where you at? Where you at, Russ? Like as even just like as like a, I'm not even trying to offend anyone right now. As like someone who has felt so confused over the last 6 months, not knowing what the F's going on with the pandemic, not fully understanding what's going on with Black Lives Matters and all of these different weird things we've never experienced before. I would love just anyone to talk with the person who was proclaimed to have this power. I would love for them to like say anything. Yeah, people are going to nitpick and people are going to make fun of it because you're obviously going to get things wrong, but it would just be comforting. Like being in the state of Utah, it would be great to know that everyone in the state of Utah is on the same page in some way. And even if I don't believe whatever Russell M. Nelson prophesies about what's going on, I would still get behind my community because I just want to feel like there is some sort of unity right now. And there still isn't. And so I don't want this to come across to any LDS people listening. I don't want this to come across like I'm attacking your beloved prophet in any way, even though I know that I just want him to do his job. And I know that sounds terrible, but I don't know of any other way to say it. But like, please prophesy, please, like anything to get like, and don't say we suggest that all, and don't have you come out and say it, homeboy. Like you have an opportunity. Like we advise all members in the state of Utah to wear masks. Like, why just the state of Utah? Why is that what just came out? How are we not saying like all members? We should all do this. Like because I understand what it is. Like everywhere is different, and so you have a different like Mexico Mormonism is different than United States Mormonism. I understand. Like it's not unified anywhere, but it would just be so nice. I'm crying. I'm a boy in the wilderness crying out, Russell M. Nelson. Jesus, God, have your prophet prophesy. If there's one prayer that I wish could be answered, have him prophesy. And like, great, maybe he will in October. I'd like to hear something from him in the next month if possible. Since you always tell us when we make goals to make timelines for those goals, I'd like to set a timeline for you. Oh, look at this guy trying to command God right now. No, I'm just a guy who's trying to figure out my fucking life. I'm sorry that all I want is some guidance. But I apologize.
Yeah.
sorry, I got so heated.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know what. Like, I just give me something, please.
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, it's I wouldn't say I have the same. Those are very high expectations. I don't think I.
What are you talking about? How are those high expectations? My expectations are for him to do exactly what he was called to do. How is that a high expectation?
If that's what he was called to do.
It's me being, if he wasn't called to prophesy, what was he called to do? Like it would be like me right now after you have your 3 kids, just being like, man, I don't know if I have much loftier goals than for you to just feed your kids. Go ahead and beat them. Like, I know that's creating a straw man right there, like, to be fair, but like, I'm sorry that I have such high expectations of the greatest being ever known in the history of the universe. kind of.
Of
My
God, right?
expectations are literally like at the level of the genie from the Aladdin. Those are my
Yeah.
levels of expectation. It's not higher than that. It's pretty low. So you got the genie from Aladdin right here. You got like Aladdin's down here. It's not that high. Not that high. I feel like God's way up here with the amount of power he has.
Yeah. So you're talking
I
about God, not
apologize to all of your LDS listeners because I just turned them off significantly with how I was just talking. But like, I don't know. That's why I left. I'm sorry that like I left because I felt like I didn't have any direction anymore, um, and so it all comes back to that. I'm just like I feel like Joseph Smith sometimes. We have all of these religions, and when I say all of these religions, I mean all of these religions within Mormonism, within the LDS faith itself. And no, I'm not talking about the fundamentalists. I'm talking about literally Brigham's church. We have all of these different churches that are saying all of these different things on how you should live. And I am confused. And that is why I left, because I could not find anything unifying among these people. I could have been okay with Joseph's polygamy if everybody agreed on it, but not everybody agrees on it. I could have been okay with the racism of Brigham Young and him taking the priesthood and temple blessings away from all people of color. But we can't all agree on that either. Like, I
so
just wish there was some sort of unification.
you would have been okay with that, just if everyone agreed on it?
I would have been okay with it if we could all agree on, like, so this is what I mean by, there's the group that's just like, he was a racist, a person of his time, and that's it, and that wasn't great. But then you also have the people who are just like, no, he was absolutely correct. What he was saying about them being lesser people is valid. Like, I don't hear anybody coming out and saying, I know they have the essays, the famous essays and whatnot, but like, I don't hear anybody coming out and saying, so he was like, once again, Russell M. Nelson, all you have to do, I know you're listening to this podcast, all you have to do is come out and disavow it. And you want to know what? You're not going to lose anybody. There aren't going to be more people who leave or exodus the church. People will stay because they'll be like, finally someone has acknowledged and apologized for these, I wouldn't say they're terrible things, but these really bad things. Like, when I think terrible things, I think of like genocide. Like, the Mormon church has never genocided anyone, to my knowledge. to my knowledge. I know the Old Testament, there were some genocides, but the LDS church hasn't killed a bunch of people. And sorry, I'm getting so passionate right now. I'm like just talking on and on. But that's what I meant. That's what I meant by like and even so, and within those two groups, there's nuances within each of those groups. Like, I just wish there was someone who could come out and unify us behind one thing, because especially now with the state of how polarized we are politically, it would just be nice to have there be something. And that's what my wife and I, like, not to like toot our own horns, we did the big fast that they did back in March or April, I believe it was. I think it was April, because it was like Easter. Like, we participated in that fast, fully knowing that fasts don't do anything, but knowing that the idea of the community being together and us being a part of that could be the start of something for the future. Some sort of unit. Because what I want is, I don't want us to like be those people in Utah who are just always kind of like, oh, those are Alex drinks. So I don't know if we can have him over around our kids. Because he drink. Like, I want there to be like, oh, this is totally normal and we can all be friends. I feel like Michael Scott sometimes, just like I want a million friends. Like, I don't actually want a million friends. I just want everyone to like be cool with each other for the most part.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and on the, I guess I'm not as bothered by the differences, like the different churches you talk about within the church, because I would get scared if there were, because for example, North Korea is very unified around a leader, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I gotcha.
So, so the expectation that it's going to be perfect, and everyone getting around one thing, that's a little worrisome to me, where I'm more of like, let's have everybody talk with each other and allow.
But pushing it back again though, but isn't that like what Jesus is going to do when he comes back? Isn't that the whole idea of Adam on Diamond? Like, aren't we
To
eventually all going to have like one?
I'm not sure.
Fair
Um,
answer.
yeah. That's a good question. That's a good point.
That's how I always thought.
But
I always thought
yeah,
he was going
well,
to come and
yeah,
return
yeah,
to his paradisiacal glory or whatever. I don't know.
right. Well, so
A lot of unanswered questions.
so well, because I think about it like what is
Prophesy
it
to
that
me, Todd. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Prophesy to me, please. I'm so desperate for answers. I know that you're the most likely person to have them.
Yeah, well, this is something that I think about, like what is healthy for a religious community, and I've been kind of thinking in the other direction, that what would be healthy um, for the LDS community, both locally and globally, is to um, permit a little bit more variation and be open to conversation and things like that. So, like we've been talking a little bit on the board about Judaism, and now there are definitely, I haven't got into it yet. There are definitely some very closed societies within Judaism, um, but there's a lot of openness as well, right? And there's a lot of variation and different movements within Judaism and different ways to be Jewish. And um, it's an evolving system, but there's some stuff there that works very well, I think, and that I think would be good to apply in Christianity and Mormonism as well. Because I guess what I'm thinking about are the people who don't feel like the one message, to the extent that there is one. Granted, there's not, right? But to the extent that there is kind of a dominant message, if they don't feel like they can completely buy into that, is it just a wholesale acceptance or rejection? I don't think it needs to be that. Maybe we could slow down a little bit, um, have conversations, reflect, and um, and there could be room for different perspectives. But that's more pluralistic, right? That's not the one
When you
message
say
of,
perspective, though, you're referring to like you can have different perspectives on policy, history. What exactly?
oh,
Because
just
all of it.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, people will probably. I know history is a big one. It seems to be a big thing that people are exposed to first. That the history might be more complicated, but then a policy is a big one too, right? It seems like there's probably history seems to be the one that's um, more of a problem. Be like, oh, now I'm really concerned. I'm not sure I can be Mormon anymore. Whereas with policy, I haven't seen that as much. It's more like, yeah, I'm a Mormon who is in support of gay marriage, but that doesn't really affect the foundations. Um, it that seems to
I
be the
was
case
there at
for most.
Prop 8. I was there when they read how we should vote.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's like so, but like but that's like one of those things. I like that there is nuance because the church can grow and improve, but then that by saying that a church can grow and improve, you're automatically saying that it isn't perfect, which I
right.
think is honestly kind of cooler, in
Yeah,
my opinion, having a flawed church that is evolving to become the perfect religion at some point, but then you also lose a lot of the past doctor or past teachings where it's just like, no, but it's the one true church. Just like, well, it will, like, oh my God, like, isn't that like such a more powerful thing? Like, we will be the one true church. Once
yes,
Jesus is at the head of it again during the second coming, we will be the one true. Like, we do know that. We know we're not perfect right now, but we will get there. And we are
yeah,
the only path to get there. But is that even true? Like, that's what I love about Mormonism, Mormon heaven, like just in general. I'm like, it's the best. It's the best heaven because everyone has a chance,
yeah.
except for sons of perdition. Everyone has a chance. Whereas with like Christian religions, like, all right, well, it's everyone's going to hell. And with
Yeah.
Mormons, everyone makes it to heaven.
Well, and so Terrell Givens, he has a book called People of Paradox, and it's about Mormon culture and identity. And he talks about these kind of tensions. So I don't remember what they were. He has like four big ones, but I'll just say, I think one tension is this idea of there's the one true church, but then also it's an evolving church, right? That we continue to have ongoing progression and revelation, even though it's already like the one true church. So those ideas don't fit together perfectly, but I mean, that's something where that tension comes in. That's creative tension, I think. And I agree. That's something we don't always think about, that when we celebrate the changes, but we're scared of future changes, right? Because implicit in that, what we don't always address is that things aren't perfect now, or there are some things that we do now that aren't correct, and that will be corrected. Um, we don't always put it, well, we hardly ever put it that way, but I think that follows from the logic of it.
And if I could just add to that a little, I also wish that we were better at celebrating those who wanted the changes. I already said this, but wanted the changes before the changes happened. Because those are the people that I feel, I'll be honest, I don't care that much. But those are the people who, like when I hear about them, I feel bad for them. I'm not going out and trying to find out who these people are, being blatantly honest, but I know that they exist. Then there's also like people that are like just dicks, man. Like most of like the ex-Mormon leaders are all a bunch of douchebags. Like that are all they do it under the pretense of care, but they're just trying to make as much money as they can, which I hate, because it's like, see guys, see, like it kind of confirmation bias for all Mormons. Like they're just trying to make money. I'm like,
I
not all
feel
of
like
them.
I need to give a disclaimer that these are Alex's views and not mine. But
Well, I didn't name any people. I didn't name anyone. I didn't name anyone yet. I haven't created any libelous situations for you yet. Or slander. It would be slander.
But I hear you, Alex, and I validate your
Man, because I anyways, there's just but that's also like the realization of just people are people, and like that's what sucks too, because what sucks for Mormons, to be honest, is like, you guys have a direct line to God. You should be able to make good decisions all the time. And these people who no longer have that direct line to God, it makes sense that they're making these poor decisions and mistakes, which is unfair to them. Like if I am being a true humanist / atheist, agnostic, whatever the hell you want to label me as, they're just people trying to do the best that they can with the knowledge and information that they have, for the most part. I don't believe that anybody is trying to do nefarious, evil things. I think everything that people do, they believe are good things. And that goes for terrible people who make really bad decisions. I'm thinking of like rapists and murderers. I think until they get caught, there's very rarely like remorse. Sometimes there is, but I think more often than not, like people are doing things because they think they're doing the right thing, even if it's not. Well, and that's what sucks too for me, is like, I don't know what's right and what's wrong. And I know people, like when they hear that, they go, see, Alex is lost. He doesn't know what's right or what's wrong. It's just like, I go back to, eventually this world is going to end one way or another. We're either all going to forget about it or all see it. Depending on how you believe, or if you believe in reincarnation. No, it's still, we either will remember it or we won't.
It'll be the end of 2020, I think.
And so when those things are not clear and cut, as far as like what is correct and what is incorrect, it's very hard for me to even care about like the choices I make now, because I just go, yep, 150 years, no one's going to remember any of this. Like we remember Genghis Khan. Well, I don't really know him. I know the name. I don't really know that much about him. We remember Hitler, obviously. Like there are names, but like Hitler was 70 years ago? Give it another 150, 300, 400 years. Like it's going to be just like Hannibal to the Romans. We're going to forget about him. Like, and that's so crazy for me to like think about. They're like, no, like once a year, there's a movie about Hitler. Like that. Well, 80 movies in 80 years compared to all of eternity is not that many movies. It's just so it's hard for me to fully comprehend and understand, but what is right and what is wrong in reality? I know what I think is like, do I think genocide's bad? Yeah. Are there people who think it's right? They're a part of eugenics I'm not completely opposed to. And when I say that, I mean like, if there is a way to identify, oh, we know that you're going to have MS, we can switch this little thing so that you don't have MS. That's what I mean by I'm okay with eugenics. Right. I don't mean like, oh, you have MS, we're going to kill you.
Right.
Like,
right.
That's not the part of eugenics I support.
I'm glad you clarified.
There are these terrible things that we can get rid of that is just like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. So eugenics in and of itself, something that people think of as a boogeyman that they hate, I am pro in some ways for. It's like another thing, Thanos.
Yeah.
Like I was, before he got super angry, I was like, I get it. Like, I kind of get what you're going there. Like, we are overpopulated and raping the earth of all of its natural resources. And because that's an important thing about Thanos that people don't realize. He didn't just kill humans. Like, I think people view it like genocide. No, he killed half of every single living thing.
Mm.
So in order to bring it back into balance. So for example, I believe if someone was going on extinction, so let's say the black rhinoceros, he would not have eliminated any black rhinoceroses. He would have eliminated only things that are overpopulated and taking too much. So that's why I was pro Thanos. I'm trying to explain why I support a fictional character. So let me get back to Hitler. So the things I like about him, but I know that I was just rambling again, but essentially it's just like, there's no such thing as eternal truths or an eternal truth, big T, whatever, in my opinion. And it seems like with LDS culture, it's almost like we have this Greek God, Roman God, Hindu God type thing where each individual policy or doctrine is like its own type of God. And then we do have our Zeus that is kind of over everybody, Zeus and Jupiter, that's over everything. But like, we have the little policies and doctrines and rules that are like a Dionysus, that are a Hermes, that are like all of these other Apollo. Nothing's really changed. We've just changed the names of them, just like the Romans did.
Yeah.
Anyways, do you want me to go off on the church again? Because I could do that for another.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But if there was anything that I kind of wanted to hope, or like for any LDS people who are listening after, like, and I apologize because I understand how sacred these things are to you that are no longer sacred to me at all. Just know that, like, for the most part, they're just going through the Kubler-Ross model. When people leave, that's why they get angry. That's why they get depressed. So the Kubler-Ross model is just the stages of grief.
Okay.
And so that's the bargaining, acceptance, like all those different, I can't think of them like in order, but people are just dealing with the loss of, once again, they lost their father in heaven. They lost their brother in heaven. They lost their savior. They're losing they're losing people who have already died again because they thought that they were going to be able to see them after this life. They're going through a number of different things.
Right.
It doesn't justify how we treat you and how we are negative towards you. But if you could have a little bit of empathy as people are dealing with the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, that'd be great. And once again, we'll try to be as nice as we can to you. Eventually we'll get to the acceptance stage. Just know that it's a lot harder than you probably think. Like, it's a lot harder than you think it is.
That's something I keep coming back to, thinking about is time, just the role of time in things. And not just in changes in faith, but like if somebody's going through something really traumatic, like how do you come back from that? And time is just such an important thing.
Do you mean in terms of like how long it can take? Because it will vary essentially, or just allowing the process to go?
That it's a process, right? So you mentioned, you said Kubler-Ross?
Yeah.
So that's a process, right? So there's time involved in it that people have to pass through. So and it's hard to rush those things a lot of times.
And it's different for everybody.
Yeah. Well, because
there's some people who are in the church for like 60 years, get over it in like a couple of days. There are people who've been in the church for like 3 months who hold on to it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sorry, Corona. It's always Corona.
Hope
not. Yeah, hope not. And
I'm hanging out with you for the last hour and a half.
I know, you could get it through the microphone.
Through the microphone. Technology, it's advancing. We can even share diseases through electronic signals.
Anyway, I guess what I'd like to do, I mean, we should probably wrap up now because we're about an hour and a half.
Right, about hour 15, yeah.
Yeah. But it would be interesting for me, at least, to do a follow-up where maybe I talk more about kind of where I come from on these things. Because I think the
instead of me just attacking you, you as the proxy for all of LDS LDS cult. Like, I don't even believe some of the stuff you're attacking me for right now.
I know, right? No, yeah. So like, no, I wanted to let you talk. Um, but but the reason I would like to do that is because a couple things. One is I think it's important to figure out how to work through these topics between people of different perspectives, right? Because I think to maybe not model, but kind of do trial and error on display.
Don't model after me.
Nobody.
Nobody, anyone who's leaving the church, do not model after me.
But
Just
people,
get over it.
but it's an important thing to figure out, and it's an important process to figure out. And then also like something in my own personal interest that I'm trying to figure out is kind of how to do missionary work, but like in the language, in non-religious language, in secular language, to maybe present Christianity or Mormonism in a way that is
palatable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, palatable. Because so like I think of it in this way. So you went to Mexico, I went to Paraguay, you know, we both spoke Spanish. So there's a language there, and also culture, right? So you kind of learn the culture and how to communicate through that. So there's a big translation process that goes along. And I think there's a worldview translation process as well. So if I were a missionary called to preach the gospel to a secular world, there's a language to that, and there's a worldview and culture to kind of take on. And I got to figure out how to do that, right? And so that's something I'm working through. So I think it would be interesting to have a follow-up conversation where I kind of try to explain my views and bounce them off of you to present them
to be torn down.
Hopefully not to be torn down, right? But to be understood.
Yeah.
Well,
and I would almost be better to have someone like Sheila. Well, no, because Sheila even went to a Christian thing, but like someone who's not LDS, because I know all of the vernacular, and then I also know like all of the retorts to like specifically LDS stuff. But when it comes to like spiritual health in general, I'm totally down for that, because I don't like it sucks, man. Like I'm sure a lot of people just, well, Alex, just come back if you say it sucks. I'm like, no, that sucked more. Like it's trying to have the least amount of suckiness.
Yeah. So
at this point. And once again, I hope I get through the wilderness at some point where it's just like, oh, I get life now. I understand it now. It sucks that I'm 30, so that means I'll have 50 or fewer years to like enjoy it potentially. But I do strive to get to that. I don't even know what it is. I mean, self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
As often referred to in psychology, maybe, but something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's seeking that, right? Whatever that is, as just a placeholder. And there are lots of different ways to do that. And I think a kind of eclecticism can be helpful. You're just like pulling ideas from different places and trying them out, looking at them and seeing what can work. That's one reason I like to get into all of this. I was asked the other day, like, if I was a religious person, and I said yes, but then talked a little bit about like how like my curiosity and interest is very, very broad. Like I just try to pull from a ton of resources because there's so much out there to draw from.
Well, how do you know which of those sources
That's the process.
Useful or not, though?
That's the process.
It could be dangerous.
I know.
It could be dangerous, Todd. You're taking some dangerous steps right now.
I know.
And I just want to warn you that you need to be careful, because the devil can be deceiving. So you got to be careful, man. Well, that's what's like. People stop saying that. Just let people figure stuff out for themselves. Like it's like the pornography thing. Like I know that we're trying to wrap this up, but like it's like the pornography thing. The more you talk about it, the more people seem to be doing it. So stop talking about it. Yeah.
That people will just forget that it's there.
So similarly with like stuff like this, like when people are doing this research, don't like forbid them from doing it. It's just going to make it that much. It seems that humans love things that they're not supposed to have.
Yeah, because we want to know why.
Titillating.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm down, man. Like, but honestly, like I have such a profound respect for you, and then a lot of people in the abyss as well, because there are a lot of different opinions out there. But to be able to, I know I've said this bunch of times, to be able to safely have those opinions and to be able to kind of flesh them out more than just like your off the cuff initial thought is so beneficial to have, especially right now, which I know everybody says, but it really is, because there's no safe places anymore, which I know sounds stupid, because conservatives make fun of those places that colleges have been creating, but now it's the conservatives who need those safe spaces. The irony,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
because
Everyone needs.
they just can't say anything anymore like they hope. Um, so I appreciate that, and I also
Yeah.
appreciate all those people who I can have these types of conversations with. There aren't that many, if I'm being completely honest, but
Mm.
it does help me as significant from a mental health standpoint overall.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. And and I was gonna say we should since you've been helping me out coming on my podcast, I'd return the favor if you ever want. Come on, we want to talk about it now.
For sure.
If I may be so bold as to invite myself.
It's going to have to be. It's going to have to be. I'll figure out one. It's just I know what people enjoy, and
Yeah.
well, we can talk about it offline. But it wouldn't be on what does it mean to be a man. It would not be that. That one did well, but it definitely
Wasn't one of the.
For whatever reason, people just like super personal stuff.
Oh, okay.
So like, I don't even know. I don't even know what I would. Oh, maybe I could have you walk my wife and I through like marital things and raising kids. Oh, actually, want to know what? That would probably be a really good one.
Yeah.
That'd actually be a good one. I've been wanting to do one of those for a long time, but I haven't had anyone that's had the time or bandwidth.
Sure.
Or that actually care about their kids, if I'm being completely honest. Todd's the only person who loves his children. Awesome.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah,
and I'll talk to you later.
I'll let you
All
know
right.
how everyone likes about that. Thanks, Todd.
All
Thanks,
right.
Todd. Bye.
Bye.